Members, we have attained the quorum. It is about time to start. Confirmation of the minutes of the 31st meeting held on July 5th. The minutes have been made available to members. Any questions? If not, I take the minutes as confirmed. Nothing other matters arising. Business arising from previous council meetings. Legal Service Division report on bill referred to the House in accordance with Rule 54.4. Legal advisor, please. Chairman. Will members please refer to paper LS70, stroke 12 to 13. The bill seeks to amend the Securities and Futures Ordinance to provide for a regulatory framework for the over-the-counter derivative market. And there are provisions regarding reporting, which will be done in electronic way, and also for market misconduct, the SFC will improve the mechanism, and for market misconduct offences, there will be amendments under the Organized and Serious Crimes Ordinance. Upon conviction, there will be orders issued for the assets. In 2011, 2012, and 2013, the FAP, Panel on Financial Affairs, was consulted, and members did raise quite a bit of concerns. Chairman, this bill has significant implications on the market. Perhaps members might wish to set up a Bills Committee. Mr. James Toll, sole proposers, who would like to join, please? Your hands up, please. Next, Legal Service Division report on subsidiary legislation, gazetted on July 5th and tabled in the Council on July 10th. Legal advisor, please. Chairman, please refer to paper LS70. There are 3 items there. The first 2 are under the mandatory provident fund schemes regarding the contributions for casual employees amendment order and number 2 order. These 2 amendments are to specify the standard for contribution for employees. This is a simplified arrangement because at the moment the workers are paid on a daily basis. Chairman, these 2 LNs will introduce a standardized contribution standard, and this maintains the 5% standard. On November the 1st and June the 1st, they will go into effect respectively. That's June next year. Do you see the need for a subcommittee? If not, just a reminder that the deadline for amendment is October the 16th. Chairman, the other one doesn't involve policy matters. There's commencement notice, import and export strategic commodities regulations, amendment of Schedule 1, Order 2013, commencement notice. July 8th will be the commencement date. The order is in relation to the strategic commodities. There will be a relaxation there in terms of the measures. There weren't any questions raised. I don't suppose that members need a subcommittee. All right, comments? If not, further business for the Council meeting on July the 17th, tabling of papers. Report number 21/12 to 13 of the House Committee on Consideration of Subsidiary Legislation and Other Instruments. There are 18 items of subsidiary legislation, period for amendment of which will expire on July 17th. Regarding the 6 items made under the new companies ordinance, as the administration will move 3 proposed resolutions at the council meeting to amend 3 of the items, members will have the opportunity to speak. In addition, as Mr. Sin Chung-kai and Dr. Lau Wai-kwok have indicated their intention to speak on the relevant 4 items, a motion will be moved at that council meeting to take note of the report in relation to those items. In accordance with Rule 49E7 of the ROP, if the motion relates to more than 1 item of subsidiary legislation, the debate on that motion may be divided into 2 sessions, each of which relates to 1 or more items of subsidiary legislation. There are 2 sessions. The first one is trade descriptions powers not exercisable by Communications Authority notice, and trade descriptions unfair practices amendment ordinance 2012 commencement notice. The second session is devoted to Building Minor Works Amendment Regulation 2013 and Buildings Legislation Amendment Ordinance 2012 commencement notice. Questions, please. The speaking time for each member is 15 minutes for each session. Unless you have any questions, Ms. Emily Lau has replaced her oral question. Bills, first reading and second reading. There are 2 there. The first one is Child Abduction Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2013, and also Toys and Children's Product Safety Amendment Bill 2013. The administration will introduce them on the 17th, and the House will consider them at our meeting on October the 4th. Bills, resumption of debate on second reading, committee stage, and third reading. There are 2 there. The first one is Trust Law Amendment Bill 2013, and second, Pesticides Amendment Bill 2013. Bills committees on the above 2 bills have already reported to the House at the last committee. Members did not raise an objection to the resumption of second debate on the bills. Position of bills committees and subcommittees. As of July 11th, there are 6 BCs, 7 SCs under HC, i.e. 4 SCs on subsidiary legislation and 1 on policy issues, and there are 4 on the waiting list. Paper on the Committee on Rules of Procedure, proposed amendment to Rule 24H of the House Rules. Crop Chairman Mr. Tham Yu-jung. Chairman, under the 24H of the Rules of Procedure, in the course of a committee meeting, if someone draws the chairman's attention to the fact that there is an absence of quorum, then the chairman will have to summon members back to the meeting. If after 15 minutes the quorum is not attained, then the meeting has to be adjourned. Some members raised the point that HR 24/4 is not clear enough. CROP did deliberate the provision. But if we read this provision in conjunction with other provisions in HR 24, then it is logical to infer that the persons intended to be covered in this regard are members of the committee only. Therefore, the CROP proposes that HR 24/4 the term someone should be revised as a member of the committee to make the provision more specific and clearer, and I urge members to endorse this proposed amendment. Mr. Ronnie Tong, 2 minutes, please. If I may add, Chairman, I fully understand the logicality argument. If you restrict that to a member of the committee, I think it stands to reason but here in this proposal, we don't normally have that many members, and the members may belong to the same party, and a resolution or certain policies can be endorsed in absence of a quorum. There may be other members, but they're not members of that committee, and they cannot really fulfill the quorum rule as specified in the ROP. I think it is not really appropriate to restrict it to the member of the committee only. I'm wondering whether you have considered whether it will be revised to a member of the Legislative Council. I think that would be more appropriate. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Chairman, I'd just like to point out, I'm not sure whether this is correct or not. Now, he is saying that in absence of a quorum, then a certain party may be able to endorse certain things. Now, the thing is, if there is a lack of quorum, nothing will get endorsed. Mr. Tam Yu-chung, any supplement? Well, Chairman, I was going to make the point made by Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Now, we restrict that to a member of the committee because for panels, if you're not a part of the panel, then you're not even allowed to cast your vote. You can attend, you can speak, but you're not supposed to vote on anything at all. So by the same token, when a quorum is requested, a quorum count, then we should restrict that to members of the committee to the exclusion of non-members. That's the long and short of it. Mr. Ip Kok-him, well, from my understanding, even if we encounter the situation mentioned by Mr. Tong, even if something is endorsed, it will be subject to challenge. It will be acting against the rules of procedure. I doubt whether this would happen. So this issue was discussed at the CROP meeting. I think we have to leave it to members of the specific committee who will be allowed to raise the quorum issue. I think this is a sensible idea. Now, we might have a situation where during the course of a meeting, there may be someone who is not part of the committee. He walks by and saw a lack of quorum, and he would request a quorum call. And also, if something is endorsed in absence of a quorum, then it would be subject to challenge. Right, SG or legal advisor. Will what Mr. Tong said come to pass? If something is endorsed in absence of a quorum, or will there be a legal effect? SG, Chairman, there may be motions moved at the panel meetings that don't have any legal effect. Also, as members alluded to, in absence of a quorum. Now, when a division is called, members will be invited back to activate the voting process, so there is no question of something being endorsed in absence of a quorum.
Legal advisor, any supplement? Chairman, the Secretary General talked about the arrangement, and under Rule 24K, it provides that before a division is claimed, the chairman of the committee must ensure that a quorum is already present. But without the division being claimed, then there is no provision with regard to how things should be done. But then in any case, it's not a binding decision, right? Yes, that may be the case, but then I think members are concerned about not about whether or not it will have legal effect, but about whether or not such decision might carry certain effect. Yes, Ronnie Tong. Chairman, actually there are 2 points here. The first has been addressed by the legal advisor. All right, if nobody asks for a division, then of course, decisions can be taken, and whether or not it's binding would depend on the situation. But then the media might have this impression that a vote has been cast, and even if they are non-binding motions, sometimes they would get carried, and the question is not about whether or not they are legally binding, but then in the eyes of the public, we have been able to do so without a quorum. That's the problem. And secondly, with regard to the definition of a committee, would that include the Bills Committee scrutinizing bills? If that's the case, then there are problems. Because even if they do not have to enact legislation, but then if there are points that have to be clarified, if they need to scrutinize a bill in detail, then even if you do not pass certain resolution, that would also affect the process of scrutinizing the bill. I'd just like to clarify that with the legal advisor. Well, under Rule 93E, it says that the committee would include Bills Committee because it's a generic term. So select committees, subcommittees, and everything else would also be covered. All right. Well, generally speaking, when the Secretariat deals with a motion, then the clerk would also inform the chairman of the committee that there is a lack of quorum. Would that be the case? Secretary General, can you clarify? Well, in practice, the situation is as you said, if there needs to be a division, then of course the secretary would remind the chairman whether or not there is a quorum present. But then under the proposal that we are making now, for members of the committee, that would not include the secretary. Well, that's the restriction of the current proposal. Any further comments from other members? If not, then can we deal with this one? Do we support the proposal by Mr. Thames Crop? Well, Mr. Ronnie Tong claims a division.
各位同事，我講講。
Colleagues, let me first brief you on the motion. That is, if the attention of the chairman of a committee is drawn by a member of the committee to the fact that a quorum is not present during a meeting, well, the words by a member of a committee have been added to replace the original wording, and he shall direct the members to be summoned. If after 15 minutes have expired, a quorum is not then present, the chairman shall close the meeting without question put. So, please cast your votes.
喺我宣布停止表決。
Before I announce the results, please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. We'll display the result. 59 present, 39 for, 19 against, no abstention. I declare the motion passed. Okay. So we have passed the proposed amendment to Rule 24H of the House Rules by the crop. Next, proposal of Mr. Ip Hok-kim to follow up the matter of Mr. Snowden's allegation of the hacking into computer systems in Hong Kong by the United States government. Mr. Ip, 3 minutes, please. Yes, it's very simple, Chairman, because within this council, many members have indicated that with regard to Mr. Snowden's disclosure of the U.S. government's hacking into our computer systems, have expressed concern. They've asked urgent oral questions, and there was also an adjournment debate that shows our discontent, and we have asked the SAR government to follow up on that. And as far as I'm aware, with regard to such major issues involving an overseas government, well, this council would always express its stance. For example, the hostage incident in the Philippines, and also the Yugoslavia, Chinese embassy's attack, and so on. So we indicated our stance on both occasions. That's why I'd like to have a discussion here, so that in accordance with our past practice, can we consider asking our chairman of the House Committee to write on behalf of the Council or on behalf of the House to the Congress and Senate of the U.S. government, asking them to follow up on these incidents which have been most unethical. So I'd like members to support my proposal to follow up on this, because we do have precedents in the past, and I'm sure the Secretariat can provide us with a lot of precedent cases. Yes, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, Chairman, concerning the proposal by Mr. Yip, I support it because I believe that the HKSAR government should take it up positively, and this council should also take up the matter, and it's obviously right. But then it proposes here that the chairman of the House Committee should write to the U.S. government on behalf of this council or the House. I'm not showing disrespect for you, Chairman. I think it should have been the president of this council, that is Mr. Jesper Zhang, who should be writing on behalf of this council to the U.S. government and raise our concerns and demands. I think that would be more in order, and that would also be more reasonable. And also, externally, Mr. Zhang is the representative of this council. He is the president, but then for you to represent this council, people might find it strange. How come you are asking the chairman of the House Committee to represent this council instead of asking the president to formally represent this council in expressing our stance? So that might give rise to some misunderstanding, or they might find it strange. That being the case, I think possibly, Mr. Ip might not have considered this very carefully, is about the wording of this proposal. Should we ask the chairman of the House Committee to make this suggestion to the President, Mr. Jesper Zhang, so that the President can in turn write on behalf of this Council to the U.S. government to take up the case? I think that would be clearer, because the chairman of the House Committee is responsible for House matters, for example, negotiating with the Chief Secretary for administration and also approaching other officials and negotiate with them as to how things should be done. So can I suggest that you be acting as a go-between between this Council and the President? Well, I really agree with Mr. Wong, but then I agree with what he said. But then as Mr. Ip has asked me to write, that's why I've thrown this out for discussion with you, Mr. Ronnie Tong. Well, Chairman, it has nothing to do with whether or not we respect you or otherwise. I'd just like to ask the legal advice in a moment. That is, do we have any constitutional practice or arrangements whether or not it should have been the House Committee Chairman or the President writing such letters? And also, what's the wording? Well, in principle, I agree with what Mr. Ip suggested, because this is a very serious incident encroaching upon the privacy and rights of Hong Kong citizens. That's why we will have to take it up. And some friends have also asked me, should there be a public reprimand? But then, before the details are out, if we just reprimand the U.S. government or the U.S. Congress or Senate, it might be a bit too hasty. That's why I think we will have to find out the truth before we decide whether or not we need to reprimand them. But then I am not too reassured as to whether or not we should be using neutral wording or very harsh wording or what. So I've talked to the chairman just now, and apparently I've been told that the Secretariat has already had a draft ready. So, Chairman, can you tell me the wording of the letter about the register of the words, whether or not they are very harshly termed or what?
Legal advisor. About the convention, I think the SG has some information for members. Chairman, there were 3 previous occasions on which the House Chairman wrote to the government of previous jurisdictions. 1998, the House Chair wrote to the President of the State. In 1999, the House Committee Chairman wrote to the Office of the Foreign Affairs Office based in Hong Kong. And in 2011, the House Committee Chairman wrote to the Chief Executive on behalf of the committee about the Manila hostage crisis. So the House Committee Chairman did represent members and reflected members' views or concerns regarding what happened outside Hong Kong. Well, in connection with the draft, I think it depends on how members wish the letter should be worded. I think the letter should be worded in a neutral way, just highlighting our concerns. And it all depends on how members feel it should be dealt with. Mrs. Regina Ip. Chairman, since Mr. Edward Snowden came to Hong Kong, the U.S. Attitude was very scornful of Hong Kong. They were very disparaging of Hong Kong. There is a very famous talk show, the Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, and they cast aspersion on Hong Kong, and they poke fun at Hong Kong why we got in the way. I'm sure that they would slight us even if we write them a letter. The Foreign Intelligence Surveying Act is they have the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court in the U.S. I'm sure whether it is the court or the Congress, they issue a lot of warrants for them to do the surveillance work. And I think that we ought to urge them to do a better job in terms of monitoring. The SG cited some previous examples. I think if you write to the Senate, we write to the Vice President. If you write to the House of Representatives, it is John Boehner that we write to. So I think it is more appropriate for the President to write a letter instead of the House Chairman. Dr. Priscilla Leung. Chairman, I go along with the idea that LegCo should write this letter. As a LegCo member myself, I have received representations from members of the public. They feel that we're not really assertive enough to air our concerns. I think we have to state our position in no uncertain terms. Without the authorization, the U.S. government invaded or conducted surveillance on our communications, and someone revealed the whole thing since the revelation, and they were very aggressive. I think the members of the public are well aware of what happened. If LegCo doesn't have a strong position, if we do not get across our views in a dignified manner, then we'll be letting the public down. Now, there was an oral question about the Philippines government. The government asked them 21 times, but to no avail. I think LegCo has to make it very, very clear that the members of the public's communications have been snooped on. We have to register our very, very strong displeasure. We can leave it to the President. So Jeffrey Lam, Chairman, since the Snowden issue, some suggested that we write to President Obama to get a message across. I think it will fall on deaf ear, because the U.S. government would not give any response to any representation made about their surveillance work all over the world, including Europe. I think we have to register our concern. The right course of action, I go along with Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, but a proper course of action is for the President to do it through the Foreign Affairs Office, or the Office of the Foreign Affairs Office in Hong Kong. That this is foreign affairs, and it should rightly be left with the PRC instead of the Hong Kong SAR government, and this is a better course of action. Right? I mean, our counterparties, the Parliament, the government has their own counterparts in terms of foreign affairs. Well, we're not a parliament of a country. We are only an assembly of an SAR. I mean, there is a bit of difference there. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Chairman. Now, why can't we ask the President to do anything? Because he's all powerful. Now, this is the legacy of the colonial era. We cannot ask the governor to do anything. Now, this is an elected assembly. Certainly, we can make the President do something. But technically, Jesper Dung can ignore us, because he is enjoying enormous power. Now, if we ask him to do something, then we are changing the convention. Now, he can say no if this is considered inappropriate. Second, if you don't resolve that, then it's not good enough. I think the President will have a lot of trouble in future if we're going to do this. Second, about how we should word the letter, we can reprimand the U.S. government because they never denied what they did. They said that there was no reason why Snowden should have made the revelation. I think they have acquiesced to what happened. We should word the letter strongly. The Congress and the Senate are there to monitor the government. Now we can say that the U.S. government acquiesces to what is being revealed by Edward Snowden. The Senate and the Congress should monitor the government because they authorized the eavesdropping exercise. Right? Point taken. Mr. Ho. Chairman, I think we can invite the President of the Council to write the letter. If he chooses not to do so, then we can authorize the Chairman of the House to do so. I agree that we should write to our counterpart. This is not a state assembly, but I mean we can write to our counterpart. So we are asking the Congresses to pay particular attention to that. They have hearings held on this. In terms of the wording, I think we have to word it in no uncertain terms. The U.S. government never denied the allegation. They just explained why they had to do it, maybe sidestepping some of the issues, but they never denied it. If the facts are established, we can certainly reprimand the U.S. government. I hope that the Congress and the House, or the House of Representatives and the Senate, will be concerned about this and give us a response. This is a part of protocol, and this is a matter of course. Ms. Claudia. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Ip Kok-him that we have to write to both Congresses in the U.S. and the executive branch to explain the situation. Now we should reprimand the U.S. administration, that is the Obama administration, but as we said, we should be dealing with our counterparts. Now this is not a National Assembly. I heard what the SG said. We were told that we wrote to the state president and also the Hong Kong office of the Foreign Affairs office, and the third one is about the Manila hostage tragedy. Now, these are more like internal matters, but this time around, if we are going to do it, then we'll become very, very assertive. So are we asking the Congresses to better monitor the administration, or are we going to reprimand the administration? Right, let's hear members. And then the Secretariat will be writing the letter accordingly. This is Yin Chung Kai. Well, yes, Chairman, I agree with the idea of the President writing the letter. Mr. Ip Kok-him's letter is very clear. But what he said has gone beyond what he wrote in the letter. He's basically asking the Congresses to urge the U.S. administration to clarify the issue of U.S. government hacking into Hong Kong computers. He didn't go so far as to reprimand the U.S. government. I have no trouble with that, unless there are something that there are certain things that we have to agree on. And I think that the President should write a letter that reflect our views. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, I think we have to go out dissatisfaction and reprimand the U.S. government for hacking into our computers. Now we're writing to the Congresses, and on the one hand we are reprimanding the U.S. administration. On the other hand, the Congresses are there to monitor the U.S. administration. They should offer us an explanation about why there is an invasion of our privacy and our computer networks. I think we can make a distinction between the Congresses and the administration. At this time, I find myself in support of Mr. Kwan-yuen. He suggested that we write to the House as well as to the Senate. Mr. Jeffrey Lam said this is part of foreign affairs, but we're dealing with our counterparts. Now, we do entertain a lot of assembly representatives from overseas. We do have a liaison group in this council. By convention, we do liaise with our counterparts overseas. I think we do have the status with which to write to the House and the Senate. I don't think I can agree with Mr. Jeffrey Lam that this is foreign affairs. If this is the case, we have to do it through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but we're dealing with our counterparts overseas. I think we can certainly do so.
I think Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen has already summarized most of our views. Yes, we can reprimand the U.S. government and express our concern. Yes, Raymond Wong. Well, I think in the name of this council, for this council to write to our counterpart in the U.S. is okay, but then for this council to write and condemn their government, I think is also necessary. Please do not fall into the fallacy thinking that we will have to write to their legislature and we can only monitor the legislature's work. But then they are supposed to monitor the work of the administration, and therefore it's for them to do something about it. And therefore, I think we should have written 2 letters. One to the government. Please do not slight ourselves by saying that this is foreign affairs. In fact, we have also expressed our protest against certain acts by other governments. We have done that before. So have you read history? Actually, for this council to write to other governments, we do have the right and stature to do so. You're invading our computer system. Is that right? And if it's to be done by the foreign ministry, well, has the NPCSC said anything, or has the foreign ministry said anything? It's our systems that have been hacked. That's why we should be writing not just to the parliament, but also to the administration. We should be reprimanding them, and we should also be protesting against them. All right. Does any member wish to speak for the first time? I'll have to deal with that. 2 members. All right. I'll draw the line there because we'll have to hand over the room to the FC by 3:30. Ms. Sito. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just supplementing because we should not ask the Foreign Ministry to take over the matter, because after Mr. Snowden has left, our state has publicly said that this is something being dealt with by the SARG independently. It has never been escalated to the state level, and we have also asked the SAR government whether or not you should be doing it or taking the matter up yourself. You should assess whether or not this should be escalated to the state level, because this is foreign affairs. So we should not be contradicting ourselves, because the government back then said that it's entirely up to the SARG to do it. Ms. Helena Wong. Chairman, I agree that we should write 2 letters, one to the U.S. government, and including their Homeland Security Department, and the other one is to the Senate and Congress. So one is to the executive arm of the government, and the other is to the legislature. And I agree that we should reprimand them, and we should ask for an in-depth investigation, and they should also get back to us to give an account as to what they find and what are they going to do to destroy the information that they've collected. Mr. Ip Kwok Him. Thank you, Chairman. For a long time, I've never supported Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, but then for what he said on this occasion, I fully share his views. Number one, we can express our views very clearly in the letter, our discontent and our reprimand. But then when we write to the legislature, actually we are asking them to monitor the work of the U.S. government. So if you look at the wording of my letter, it's very clear. I think we should do that. I think it's more appropriate for us to do that. Well, if it's to be written by the president of this council, of course, this is also a very good suggestion. And also in the past, as far as I understand it, well, as the Secretariat told us that there were 3 such precedent cases. Well, sometimes we would pass it on via the Foreign Ministry. But then if you think that on this occasion we should channel it through the Foreign Ministry, well, I think we should be writing in the name of this council. I think it's also appropriate for the letters to be handed over to the U.S. government through the Foreign Ministry. Let me summarize. All right, members are asking the President of the Council to write to the Senate and Congress of the U.S. as well as the U.S. administration, and the wording is to express our discontent, our reprimand, and also our demand that there should be proper monitoring. And of course, the wording to the U.S. government and to the U.S. Parliament would be somewhat different. And if members find that agreeable, I'll convey this to the President of this Council. And I'm sure, usually when we make a request, the President would not say no to what we ask him to do. And should he say no, then I will decide what we are going to do. Yes, Mr. Ip? Well, Chairman, from what I heard from members, even for the letter written to the U.S. Congress and Senate, we should also express our discontent and reprimand. As to the channel through which we're going to hand the letter over to the U.S. government and the U.S. Congress and Senate, I think it should be left to the it should be left to the President of this Council so that he will use his wisdom to do so. Yes, I think it's good for the President to write to him, and if he doesn't do that, then we can ask the House Committee Chair to do so. Well, there is no need for you to come back to us for further decision, right? Yes. Priscilla Leung. Can we ask the U.S. Parliament to conduct an investigation, and then they should be held accountable, and they should also get back to us? All right. I'm sure the President is a lot wiser than myself, and I'm sure we can leave that to the President. All right. If you all find it agreeable, then there is no need for us to put this to a vote, and then we'll just ask the President to do it. All right. Next, AOB. There isn't any item under AOB. So for this session, we have already completed our work, and then we will have to wait till October the 14th. So I wish you a very happy summer holiday, and please try to recharge yourselves because I'm sure there is a huge workload waiting for us.